To our panelists. As you all know, this session is entitled Creativity for Good, Refocusing Innovators on What Matters. And just to open it up, we know that there are lots of different types of organizations, both in the public and the private sector, that are really known and recognized for their creativity, like Microsoft, like SAP, and they have leadership that empowers and fosters creativity. They embrace the idea of risk-taking, and perhaps most of all, hardest of all, they know that in failure, oftentimes there are breakthroughs, right? So today we want to talk about these organizations and some of the leadership within them and practices that can really help to empower creativity, in particular at the organizational level and also for individual contributors. So Adriana, I want to start with you. One thing that we've been talking about is this concept of leadership. Your title is literally Head of Innovation at SAP Africa, and so I want to start with you on that topic, and specifically I'm curious how you think leadership can play a vital role in empowering, as I said, both individuals as well as entire organizations to really cultivate a work environment where creativity thrives, where creativity is encouraged and rewarded.
So I think we've heard it a lot during this conference and in general about how diverse teams and correctly led, of course, also will result in, I think, the plethora of possible solutions that will eventually enable us to reach the kind of targets that we're looking for. So that said, I should mention my main aim in life is actually to lead humanity from planet Earth onto planet Mars. So I will try to tie this in together.
I've never heard anyone say that in person, so I'm wanting to hear exactly what you mean.
So I'm a theoretical physicist, I'm a researcher, and I was offered the job at SAP as a result of my public speaking. Talk about humanity's next giant leap, which would be to populate other worlds besides the one that we currently live on. So this may sound like science fiction if you've never heard it before, but I think we have to remind ourselves often what a unique era we are living in right now. Of course, it's the one we live in, and it's the only one we know, but when we reflect on history and we look towards the future, I think we will see the greatest change, the greatest rates of change that we've ever experienced as a species. So talking about sustainability, talking about diversity, I think to really sustain ourselves as a species, we are reaching and finding ourselves in some of the most challenging situations ever in the past decades. Perhaps we could boil it down to poor resource utilization in a lot of cases. And this is partly due to population growth, which is faster than ever before. So there are many motivations for wanting to leave the planet, but I think space exploration, to lead this back to the theme of the topic of this discussion today, space exploration is the greatest celebration of human creativity and innovation. During the Apollo missions in the 60s and 70s, more students than ever enrolled in STEM degrees in the US. As a result of this larger cohort than ever before of students studying science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, we had inventions like the personal computer, the mobile telephone, the internet. The internet was invented by researchers at CERN, banging particles together, having huge amounts of unprecedentedly huge amounts of data that they needed to analyze. And the internet came out as a result of that. So there are all these kind of indirect links of how exploration drives creativity and innovation, because a challenging situation will always, because we're humans, result in creative thinking that will result in new types of solutions. So I'm not sure if I've answered your question, but
yeah, that's great. I'm curious if you can even talk about it sort of more concretely, and maybe we can go back to Mars on this and exploring life off of Earth. But climate change, right, is a really big problem that we're dealing with, and this is potentially, and when you talk about social impact and social good, how do you view that issue as something that can really benefit from collaborative innovation?
So that's actually one of the motivations amongst many, besides pure curiosity, which I'd put as my topmost reason for wanting to explore Mars and do research there, is to understand global climate change. So did you know that Mars once had liquid oceans, bodies of water in liquid form on the surface, which implies the temperature was 0 or above around 2 billion years ago? So Mars's average temperature now is negative 50 degrees Celsius. Venus, for example, also has evidence of liquid water on its surface, more recently, around 1 billion years ago. This implies that there's been a temperature change of hundreds of degrees on the surface of Venus. called the so-called runaway greenhouse effect. So by studying these planets, which we are doing remotely already, ESA, NASA, all the space programs have been sending missions to these planets for the last few decades to try and understand how climate change happened there. But these are crucial data points in terms of understanding what can happen on our planet Earth. We are studying a single planet here, a single data point. So by comparing our predictive models of how climate may evolve on Earth with what we know and understood to have happened on Mars and Venus, we can become even more accurate in simulations. I come from the scientific perspective of obviously trying to model and understand the causes and the effects of releasing more greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide. And let's also remember that the greatest extinction event, or one of the greatest extinction events that ever happened on planet Earth, was when oxygenic photosynthesis emerged around 2 billion years ago. Most of the species that were around at the time died. I think the difference with us, and I won't speak for too long here, is that we are aware of our impact on the environment. We need to act with purpose and with consciousness of what we're doing. We're not the bacteria that suddenly managed to split water and cause the extinction event without knowing it, arguably. We are aware of what we're doing, and I think having purpose behind our creativity and our innovation is really crucial.
That's really, that's brilliant. I'm not a scientist. I'm the most non-scientific person ever, and to have the perspective of inclusive innovation from the idea that we're including looking at other planets and being creative around some of our needs is really interesting. So thank you for that. Laurence, I want to come to you, and especially on the topic, I mean, we've talked about cultivating creativity at the organizational level, on the planetary level, but also I'm interested in individuals, and especially at a place like Microsoft, this concept of growth mindset, which I know is central to a lot of the work you do. And I'll just explain very quickly for people who may not know already what growth mindset means, and I hope you'll expand on it. But essentially that you invest in, sort of constant learning. The idea is that individuals can be developed over time, and it's different from a fixed mindset, which essentially assumes that we have sort of innate abilities, fixed gifts, if you will, that are not to be developed and evolved over time. And so how have you sort of effectuated a culture shift at Microsoft where you're really promoting that and helping individuals to learn and grow constantly?
Yeah, so hi everyone. I think going back to your question and this creativity for good and how you really instill that within the organization, there are two really important things. The first one is to have a very clear and orientated mission. And second is effectively to create the conditions from a cultural standpoint to make it happen. And we're very lucky right now at Microsoft because we have both. Thanks to Satya Nadella leadership. So when Satya took over as a CEO 3 years ago, he really started working on why are we there? So what's our mission? What do we want to do? How do we want to impact? And basically, so he worked quite a bit with his leadership team and came with a mission statement, which we are really using every day in everything we do. So I'll just frame it so that people know what I'm talking about. So this mission statement is we are here to empower every person and organization on the planet to achieve more. That can sound quite ambitious. At the same time, it's really profoundly grounded in everything we do, in every innovation we make. So looking at the impact we want to have, not only from a business standpoint, but obviously from a societal standpoint and on people's life at work and at home. So I think it's very important to start with that, because if you don't create this very clear vision on what you want to achieve as a company, it's very difficult to ask, people within the organization to focus on innovation for good, to look at, how they are going to impact in the areas they do if you don't have this kind of super high-level mission statement. And that's really helping us. And then, obviously, it's not enough just to say, okay, this is what we want to do. It's how we're going to create the conditions for that. And that's why I'm talking about this cultural shift and the environment you need to create from a cultural standpoint to make it happen. And there, so I would encourage people, if you haven't read the book from Carol Drake, Growth Mindset, which is really, really talking about the effectively change in our behaviors, moving from a position where you have the feeling you know everything and you rule the world and you don't have to think about different ways or taking different perspectives on how to approach topics, to a world where you are really in this growth mindset. So taking a step back, looking at other perspectives on how we can do things, failing fast. I will come back on that. I think it's very important in this culture shift. Learning from others, working as one. Obviously, diversity and inclusion play a super important role there. And so this culture shift, this growth mindset has been really something we are driving at Microsoft across the organization to really change the behaviors and to create the rooms for people to dare innovate, to dare come with new ideas, to have the right to fail, and to have the right to try new things. I mean, there's one example we like to take, and I'm sure many of you maybe heard about it. It's the chatbot Tay, which we launched a couple of years ago. I'm sure in the US you heard about that one very clearly. So, the teams were very proud of launching this chatbot on Twitter. And when the chatbot came out, it was a complete disaster because the chatbot was learning from the interactions with people who were interacting with the chatbot on Twitter. And then unfortunately, we had a lot of people who started interacting in the wrong way, right? So teaching the chatbot the wrong things, and then we ended up with really bad, interactions. So we decided to retire. Obviously, of course, very rapidly the chatbot, and I think the way Satya approached it from a leadership standpoint was just really perfect because basically, first of all, he sent an apology, on Twitter to say, we failed with this project, and we're sorry about that. And at the same time, he sent also a very positive message to the teams, internally the engineers and the teams who worked on this innovation, to say, we had a problem with it, but please keep going and try again, and just, learn to fail fast, learn fast, and try over. And then they started and created a new bot, which actually has been very successful, called Zo. So I think it's a good, example of the culture you need to create to ensure that people dare creating new things, they are trying new things to have an impact and obviously, create things for good.
I remember that moment, and it was both shocking from the perspective of, wow, technology can do this, right? But then also remembering that there are humans involved, and I don't know how many people are familiar with the incident, but it was sort of the dark underbelly of Twitter, came out. And
absolutely.
It's also just to put it in perspective in terms of Microsoft having been really at the front of technology. I mean, it preceded all of what we're now dealing with, right, with the U.S. election and bots.
Yep.
And so it's very, I appreciate what you're saying in that. It really takes leadership to be able to both define clearly a mission and to also act that out in practice and to be a true leader, but then also to have the tools and be able to implement them among individuals to then set them free to sort of go implement it, right?
I think technology is transforming our lives. I mean, we all see that, and I think even in this conference, looking at everybody super connected and so on. So artificial intelligence is a super hot topic at the moment, and obviously you want to create the environment for people to innovate and to look at the good things they can take out of that, and we start seeing great examples of really positive impact on the society, on people with those technologies. At the same time, so you want to create this environment where people dare testing new things, and at the same time you obviously want to have an environment where you're careful about what you do, right? So this is the kind of mission and responsibility that we are leading with, and we are caring about at Microsoft, obviously, to ensure that we don't do full things, or when we try and we fail, we rapidly change and learn from that.
And say that it's okay. That's the process, right?
No, exactly. Yeah.
Right. So Yuri, I want to come to you now. I think your work. Oh, you have the mic. Your work with Athena Fund, I think, is a great example of sort of concrete illustration for how we can really think about inclusive thinking and really draw on the strengths from sort of the public and the private sectors. And I just want to know more about your work there. I know that in 2007, so almost 10 years ago, you launched the laptop for every teacher in Israel program. And it's not just sort of giving out laptops, of course, it's to 12,000 teachers. In fact, it's also providing 120 hours of professional training and really investing in teachers, right, to make sure that they have professional development to thrive. Can you talk about your experience launching that?
Sure. First of all, thank you for inviting me. I'm really happy to be here. I am coming from a country that the creativity and innovation is a must. And actually we are called the Startup Nation. And I was lucky enough for the last maybe 10 years before to work for a company that represented these two companies in Israel and worldwide and work with them. And I was lucky to have two IPOs in my companies and to create something for the society. I found out that teachers actually lost the major role of being the source of knowledge because of the revolution of technology. And therefore, they lost the respect of both kids, parents, and also governments, and the salaries are very low. So my mission was to get them back into the real position that we must have them, because I think teachers are the backbone of society. And we created a program whereby we give every teacher a laptop or mobile computer. And to date, we are already in half of the country, and we are recognized by UNESCO. And I think I came here by the invitation of the CEO because I think that people do not know that 85% of teachers are women. And I think people do not understand that these teachers, the salaries are very low. They are at the lower of the status of social place in society. And we have to gain them back in order to get our kids for the future, because 50% of the professions today will disappear in the next 10 years. The skill set that kids need are totally different today, which will be needed in the next 10 years. And we must empower the teachers in order to have it. And I think that especially at the STEM, when we talk about science, technology, engineering, mathematics, we have a big lack of deficit of women in this society. I'm very happy to see engineers in many speeches here today, but for your information, only 11% are women in the society, maybe STEM 24% totally in the world. And I think women do not take this profession as serious because in early age, the teachers do not really open for them the curiosity that is needed for something like that, and they lose it as they go on. And even if they join, every 100 BA, people who join, ladies who join the female who join the college, only 12 are graduating for STEM, and after 10 years, only 3 stayed in the profession. So I think that we have to think about it in this forum and in this conference, that we need much more engineers or STEM graduates from school, female, because they have a very good mind also for creativity, for innovation, and we see it more and more also in the high-tech industry where women coming in. I think also Microsoft have a special program for encouraging women for development, and I think this is one of our goals going forward.
It's really about investing at every stage. Oh, sorry. I said it's really about investing at every stage. I mean, you've made a critical point, which is that it starts early, but you have to keep with it. It kind of goes to this idea of constantly learning and investing in the individual, and not assuming that you learn science and math, in grade school, and then the interest in it is supposed to stick with you. It's constant, right?
Yeah, I think we found out that curiosity for STEM, starting at a very young age, you have to start at the 3rd grade to the 6th grade in order for them to get the curiosity to go to middle school to get the STEM subjects, and they go to high school and understand it. But if you lose this stage in the primary school, you lose these kids. So I think we have to push more female into this environment, because the future, if this lady, Adriana, wants to get to Mars, we need more women at NASA. And we need more women at all the engineering labs, because their mind is very precious, I think, especially for STEM, and they are not there. So it's a call for more women to become engineers, to become on the STEM, because the future is STEM, and we have to take care of it.
Right. So we've talked about sort of long-term strategies, the idea of growth mindset. I now want to shift a little bit and talk about risk-taking, exciting stuff. So Adriana, I want to come back to you, and you've already sort of shown us this a little bit. I think you have a great perspective on what this means at both a regional and a global level, right, in terms of your work in Africa. And specifically to that, I mean, an example there is that Africa will experience half of the world's population growth by 2050. And then meanwhile, we have technology leapfrogging, right? And there's a real issue around and rapid innovation across the globe. And there's a real issue around the digital divide and how we can close that gap, especially for developing countries. And it relates obviously to STEM education and creating an economy that is one that's sustainable and is keeping up with these innovations. How do you view that particular issue relative to risk-taking and sort of long-term planning to help these developing countries?
Yeah, so while still on Earth, I think actually I now believe that getting to Mars is probably a problem for which we have an approximate solution. We've got SpaceX, we've got Boeing, we've got various companies endeavoring to build the hardware that we require to get humans from Earth to Mars. This is essentially solved. We don't need any revolutions in science to do this. We just need huge budgets and huge teams. A problem that we haven't solved yet is sustainability on Earth. This is a hugely complex problem that there's no single solution for, and that we will really require all 7 billion of us to contribute and collaborate to solve this problem. So I'm really grateful for this opportunity of working in innovation with SAP. My region is Africa, no small task, obviously. Yeah, I find this a hugely challenging role and also hugely rewarding. So just to give an outline of some of the projects we're working on, I think education and skills are absolutely crucial. And we have a program called Skills for Africa, where we're trying to address the deficits in STEM training in terms of the IT and software and etc. tech companies that will need these new inputs from the high school and university graduates, which are not, the numbers are not necessarily there. So the Skills for Africa program deals with kind of internships where people are trained and then given jobs in top tech companies. We also have Africa Code Week, where we teach children in school to code, just a taste. I mean, we've heard earlier in the opening day yesterday that just 1 week of coding can give you a new perspective, and this is exactly what we try to do in Africa by teaching children to code, just to give them an experience of what it means to code, how a computer sort of works and the internal structures. I think, yeah, education is absolutely key. Obviously, someone who spent most of my life in the university environment, so of course, I do believe that. But I think also, having spoken a bit about training and education, I think purpose, and I'm of course not the only one to be bringing this up in conversations. Purpose is crucial. I think too often we see technology as developing. I mean, even the way of structuring that sentence is the wrong way, I think. We are developing technology. We can't imagine that we are riding the wave of technology. That is a dangerous, dangerous way to view the current developments that are taking place. We are developing the technology. We as humanity are a unique species in terms of being able to wield tools. Homo sapiens, that's what we do. So we need to remember that. We need to have purpose behind every decision that we make. So SAP...
Are you telling us that technology is not going to control all of us? They're not going to take over?
We have a choice. If that's how we view it, that could be the outcome. I think at SAP then we have the motto to make people's lives better, and I take that very seriously. I do not get involved in projects that I cannot see having a positive impact. We have that choice. We each have that choice. Believe it or not, we do have that choice to get involved with projects that really do make people's lives better. And I'm not talking about shareholders, I'm talking about all people. So in agriculture, in clean water, in education, in blockchain for land claims, for example. I mean, blockchain for refugee paper and documentation status. These are some of the ways in which we can harness emerging technologies like blockchain for social good. Big data. So we have the radio telescope, the biggest and most powerful radio telescope on Earth, being built in South Africa and Australia and some other African countries currently. It's the biggest multinational science experiment on the planet with 11 nations involved. So at SAP, we're an industry partner there, supporting students to try and imagine how to harness big data, because I mean, business data is small to medium data, scientific perspective. Science generates truly huge data, like CERN did. The SKA radio telescope will generate 160 terabytes a second. That's the current global internet traffic per second coming out of that radio telescope, which is, of course, a scientific endeavor to understand our place in the universe. But understanding how, as a business like SAP, we can start to visualize this data will, of course, have implications for the medium-sized data that companies are increasingly needing to analyze and wield in order to perform their daily functions. So I think education is crucial, and I think once we've had the education and we start to mentor and make an impact, purpose is extremely important, and that's each of our responsibilities. Governments operate on 4-year cycles. Companies often operate on quarters. Who's looking at the long-term picture? There's no one else that we can call responsible for that except for ourselves.
Well, so to continue with the topic of looking at problems and being willing to take risks while also looking at long-term strategies. So I think we have about 10 minutes left, and so I'm going to do a double question between Laurence and Yuri and we can open it up. But I want to get sort of two perspectives, one from the private sector and one from the nonprofit, public sector. That's a contrast, which is we've been talking about sort of, moving risk taking, but really looking at long-term planning, right, and sort of investing in the process. I'm curious if we're talking about really having social impact and using commercial businesses and other efforts to do good. And to sort of some of what Adriana's talking about, a lot of these problems are urgent. And I'm curious from each of your perspectives, how do you compel and convince large corporations to view these as urgent, immediate issues, especially at a place like Microsoft, which yes is moving quickly and innovating and all this, but they're still very large, and there's bureaucracy and there are other complex processes that sometimes inhibit the ability to act quickly and urgently.
Well, so again, I will just restate what I said. I think it starts with the mission. When you are very clear on what you want to achieve, and the objective for us is to really create an impact, a positive impact, as I mentioned at the beginning, I think it helps a lot on all the different dimensions of time. Obviously, it also requires, a constant investment on research, on engineering, and I cannot agree more with what has been said. I think it's super important that we keep this pace of bringing new kids, to STEM, bringing new people inside our companies to really invest on research. Because right now, what we see, for instance, I was mentioning artificial intelligence. Now we start getting, solutions that can help people who are blind to have more access to information, thanks to cognitive services, thanks to vision computing. We can also help autism, for instance. We start seeing great solutions that are available today to help people with autism to interact, to communicate much more easily. So we are solving, of course, it's not solving all the problems of Earth, but we are solving some very important problems also thanks to technology. In health, on cancer treatment and so on. There's a lot of examples that we see today being solved thanks to investments, R&D, that we are doing, and innovation we are creating internally since many years. Quantum computing, we were discussing about that, before coming here. We have made some announcements last week. We have the ambition with quantum computing to potentially solve some of the bigger problems on Earth, sustainability, carbon, removing the carbon from Earth easily, and so on and so forth. So it requires investment, it requires courage, and that's where, leadership is so important, because if you don't have a leader that has this view on what we want to achieve, it's very difficult to make it happen. And then you're back on your, business impact, but that's not really what we are looking for. So I would say strong leadership, bold ambitions, and really creating the room and investing in R&D are the critical elements to make it happen and to start impacting positively and solving some of those big, problems we want to solve on Earth right now.
And recognizing big problems, obviously, sometimes do take those long-term solutions, right? It takes time.
Okay, so it's okay. So first of all, regarding your question about risk-taking, I think it's a must in innovation and creativity. You must take risk, and our country is known for taking risks compared with other nations. And there are many successful ventures that came out. By the way, two of the largest R&D centers of both Microsoft and SAP are residing in Israel. Regarding convincing large companies, I think we have succeeded by putting together government, the union of the teachers, and large companies. By the way, Microsoft helped us with reducing the price of the operation system, and we are thankful for that. Intel helped on the side, but you talked about autism. It's a very, very moving point. We found out that kids with autism who never spoke to their families for the last 10, 19 years, never say the word to the mother, suddenly with Apple computers, not Microsoft yet, we didn't know, but we are giving iPads and teach them how to communicate, and suddenly this kid who never spoke to his mother say, "Mom, I love you. Mom, I'm going there. When are you coming?" So this is such a great change that can be done, and I think more people have to look into it, because without, again, I'm coming back to the teachers, not only the kids, because most of the companies looking after the kids, but they forget the agents who are the most important. These teachers teach the kid, teaches his family to communicate and create a huge change. So I think we need more companies looking into it. I think we need more partners to help us in this mission to empower the teachers all over the world. By the way, we have been acknowledged by UNESCO, and we are starting programs of STEM in Africa right now to empower the teachers of STEM in Africa, to give them computers, to give them curriculum, in order so they can teach the kids, to get them curious and develop from there. So I think it's a big call to companies to invest, because without this reservoir of female and male that coming from engineering schools, we have no future. We will not get to Mars. It will take 20 more years. So the kids today at the first, second grade are those scientists that will join our laboratory in 10, 15 years. So we have to think about it. So it's a call to the conference, to the Women Forum, to join the efforts to support the teachers, that 85% of them are women. Thank you.
So I want to end the panel, and hopefully I think we have a tiny bit of extra time if people want to ask questions after, so we'll have time for that. I want to end on the topic of failure, which may sound like a downer, but I actually view it as positive, right? And we've talked about, and Laurence, you spoke to this already, so I'll pose this to Adriana and to Yuri, which is how do you view failure as a breakthrough? How do you see the opportunity in crisis and get your organizations to also think that way?
Okay, so I think failure is a must learn. You cannot succeed without failure. People must accept and embrace failure. You cannot succeed too quick, and without many trials and failures, you cannot really succeed. So I think a failure is a value that you have to embrace, you have to cherish, and you have to teach your kids and your employees to not be afraid of failure, because without failure, you cannot succeed. So people and some nations are afraid of failure. I can give an examples like in Japan or India. You are not allowed to fail, so you are afraid to try things, so you keep on the end. So you can never be innovative, creative, or successful without a failure.
And Adriana, I'm hoping that you might be able to give concrete examples of the same, the way that Laurence did, of examples where you found sort of success and a chance for innovation in a moment of what felt like failure.
Yeah, I think failure can be reclassified into various categories, but I'd say a challenging situation is often one where you've not had a success. And I think in that respect, to come back to your previous question about Africa and the digital divide, we have the opportunity now, because technology is developing so quickly, to look at certain technologies that, let's not say have failed, but are now being replaced by even better ones. So a lot of African citizens don't have access to electricity. Maybe we can leapfrog the whole sort of grid coal-based power system and have solar panels rolled out on all sort of low-cost housing schemes. Telephones, so lots of parts of Africa don't have landlines. landlines, but mobile phones are a huge revolution, and the hugest adoption rates has been in Africa of the mobile phone. So we don't need to classify these as failures necessarily, but we can look around, given that we are, there is this digital divide, and use data, I think, to bring up data and the crucial role that data plays in terms of understanding a challenging situation. So I think a challenging situation always brings new problems, which brings new solutions, and whether it's space exploration and trying to live on a planet like Mars and all of the technologies that we'll develop to do that, and their implications back on Earth, because we'll be purely solar powered, we'll be recycling every molecule that we have, and these are all practices and behaviors that we should be adopting now on Earth, but we live in a rather luxurious position here where we can breathe the air and drink the water, and we shouldn't leave it too late before we start valuing our resources, which we will certainly do on Mars. So with respect to failures, I think I haven't been at SAP long enough to bring any concrete examples from SAP. But I think a great example is SpaceX. So Elon Musk, South African-born Elon Musk's company, failed several times to re-land the rockets that they were trying to demonstrate reusability of rockets. And after being nearly bankrupt, and on the fourth attempt, they finally managed to re-land that rocket on that drone platform. If you haven't watched those YouTube videos, please go do it. So basically, the only time you fail is when you stop trying. Otherwise, it's just a learning curve, right?
Yeah, I like that. I mean, it is true innovation, and it's sort of, I think you're right that you have to embrace failure and tell individuals that it's okay to fail, it's accepted. We want that, in fact, that's part of the process, but it's also, it's like, we're not failing, we're innovating. That's what this is, right? So thank you so much to all three of you, and I want to, we probably have about 5 to 8 minutes. Okay, 5 minutes. If there are any questions from the audience, we can pass a mic around.
Hi, thank you. Very interesting and very inspiring. I've heard a lot focusing on kids, so interesting kids into STEM. But from my own experience, teenagers are the one that we lose actually in the process of being interested in science. So.
Yes, I fully agree with you. We lose the teenagers, but the problem starts very young. When you have no curiosity, you are not interested, then you go to the secondary school and you choose different subjects. You don't go for the mathematics, and then when you get to high school, you are totally out, because if you don't have the basics of mathematics, physics, biology at very young age, and you don't have the interest and the curiosity, you are failed. And then you get to the high school, you go for a Bible or literature, English or whatever, but you don't really choose, or you go to become a lawyer, but not engineering or mathematics. And that's why we lose so many people. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, so that's my point. Kids are curious. And for what I've seen, they're really curious. And they lose that. So.
You are fully right. That's the problem of the education system totally. Because people are curious when they're very young. You know, kids at the age of 3, 4, 5, they can learn 4 languages. They can see a lot of videos, they can observe a lot, but the system paralyzes them. You know, because the teachers do not have computers to show them Google Earth. You know, I'm telling the story how I studied geography. We had a map. I'm almost 6'6", and I used to bring the map to hang above the board. So I say today that the teacher that teaches geography with this map is a criminal to our kids. When you have Google Earth, and you can show the universe, you can show many videos, and these kids are thirsty to look at it. So we have to give the tools to the teacher first, and also to drive governments to push for the future, because another problem is that the decision makers in the education system are all over 60 and more, so they really not embracing the new technologies. And not offending anybody, I'm over 60, so not offending anybody this age.
Do we have any other questions in the audience? No? All right, well, thank you so much to all of you for attending, and thank you to our panel.